Oh, she's simply delightful.
Comedy is quite difficult.
Charming woman. It's amazing how he ever let her slip away from him.
You have to be able to have fun and portray that sense of fun to the audience watching you.
Bye, Vicky. Watch out for snakes.
Oh, you're getting away from me! Oh! Oh! What is it?
You give your sister her half of this.
I am the woman you love to hate.
We're not sisters. I've never seen her before in my life.
The key scene in Parent Trap was the 10th scene when the two sisters discover they're sisters.
There's more to it than just switching places.
Susan was pretending to be Sharon and Sharon Susan. And then I think everybody started to get a bit confused because I was often confused.
Surprise!
The matching of the two girls.
Both of them?
We were terrified all the way through the picture that it wasn't going to work.
I meet people all the time and have letters all the time, still to this day, from people who say that The Parent Trap was a very important film for them. It was a very significant film in their life, that they found it a really empowering movie because the children, take charge of the situation.
We're in trouble. You'll have to bring Mother out here immediately.
And bring it to a very satisfactory conclusion.
The best films, I think, are where you have a cast of competent people and a wonderful script.
I knew something would go wrong.
No, nothing has gone wrong.
Nothing's
when
gone
I got
wrong.
here, she'd already unpacked.
She's going to spend the night? Mitch, I won't have that.
Now, wait a minute. You're reading implications into...
I have to give credit to one marvelous piece of talent that Walt hired. He had a knack for hiring good talent, and one of the most important, was a fellow named Bill Dover, who ran his story department for him. Bill was an insatiable reader, and he found The Parent Trap as a short novelette, this German author, about two little German girls who meet in camp and switch places, and convinced Walt to buy it. Walt gave it to me. He said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think it's a winner." And he said, "Let's go on it." And about 6 weeks later, we had a first draft script.
In The Parent Trap, the fact that the parent separated these twins and never told the other one that they had a twin somewhere in the world is extraordinary, but, that's the story.
You can't get into that too much. You'd say it and get by it, but they did want to switch places and meet their parents. The basic kernel was there, and all we did was switch the locale to California and Boston, make one girl a proper Bostonian and the other a little wild, rebellious Californian girl with a dude ranch father. Perfect story for Haley Mills.
Walt was trying to get as much out of Haley as he could while she was still that certain age, on the verge of womanhood, but not quite there yet, and she was so good at that, and such a delightful young lady as well, that I think if he'd had 8 more scripts and enough time to do it, he would have done them too with her.
It's a simple story of 2 girls and 2 parents and a third woman.
Oh, divine. Oh, Mitch, she's simply breathtaking.
I was just thinking the same thing about you, dear.
At my age. Oh, you are a sweet child.
My love for David Swift started the day I read his script. I was in New York when my agent called to say there had been a request from the Disney studios for me to do a movie. And I said, naturally, send me the script. So he sent me the script, and it was wonderful. And then he's so wonderful as a director, kind, good, strict, listens, contradicts, and gives you great confidence in yourself. So that's David Swift.
Sometimes a writer gets words a little too tricky and they have to untwist them, and I don't mind doing that on a set if a line can be rewritten simpler. I also tell the actors, if they can give this emotion without dialogue, please do so, because that's what this is all about. It's a camera that photographs the workings in your head, and we'll see it in your eyes.
There you are. Now, do you two get to know each other?
Yes. We had a lovely little talk.
I can only remember rewriting some of the Joanna Barnes lines, simply because it didn't fit the location. When you're writing these scripts, you can't tell how long it takes to get from one place to another in your directions. So sometimes we had to either eliminate or add dialogue to cover that distance of travel.
It was a wonderful script, and, you know, the Disney machine was going to be behind it, and it was going to, you know, be very appealing to families and children.
Get me out of this stinking fresh air!
I had no idea how to shoot twins when I came on this show.
Where you'd have the two Haleys speaking to one another. They would shoot that in a combination of ways. They would do it through the sodium traveling matte process, they could do it through split screen, or they could do it as a series of over-the-shoulders.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Ub Iwerks, who animated Mickey Mouse, came back to have quite another career as our resident technical genius. Ub had discovered this process called sodium vapor. Today we call it either blue screen or green screen, and we do the same thing with it.
It was very experimental, and it was very exciting, I'm sure, for the time.
We shot some, and then they went back to just shooting regular scenes for a week while we put this first deal together to see how it was going to work. So we sat there, fingers crossed and nervous, but the first ones just worked exactly as planned.
Can you imagine what it must have been like to get these results back and see such an effect created for the very first time?
What did we do?
Traveling mats and the split screens were probably doubled or tripled as a result of the first day they saw them put together. And they decided the picture was going to really be super.
It was just delightful. When you're doing something with split screens, so much of it is mechanics.
When Ub came on the set, everybody looked to him as sort of the technical guru, and the directors relied heavily on Ub's skills to achieve the best results. Today, everything is done digitally, whereas back then it was all photochemical mats, and it was a very much more tangible process and difficult to achieve. It really took a visionary like Ub Iwerks to be able to see what the final result was going to be.
What are you saying?
The traveling matte process was an amazing revolution. When he came out with that, Disney was ahead of the game from any other studio in the industry at that time. They were doing things nobody else was doing. You could shoot an actor in the foreground. You could shoot a background, completely different location.
The day that we go for our walk in the park in Boston, we didn't actually go to a park in Boston. We were in the studios. And our walk was actually on a kind of treadmill.
As I wouldn't remember it.
I remember. And she had to walk on the treadmill and burst into song. Now, I thought that was a very difficult thing to do.
What he did is laying the groundwork for much of the work that Pixar does today and other computer graphic companies.
There were several scenes where we were able to use this stand-in.
We would alternate positions at different times. Whenever there's two, it's Haley.
Is it cold in here? I'm hot. Want a Fig Newton?
And whenever there's a three-quarter or intermixing between, one is me.
Turn it down over there.
I was very embarrassed when I had to do the dress scene, and I couldn't understand why I had to do that. Couldn't I use my hand and have her up looking back? Well, she can't be down here with her face and be up there, so I was that twin that was standing with her back to the rail, and she cut out and let my little bottom and my legs show. But I got to get even because then she had to walk into the dance floor and do the dancing. Our privacy was protected, and it almost was like diapers. We were so well padded.
I made certain of that. I had about 10 pairs of underpants on. And then they start fighting together. Well, that was mayhem that day. It was glorious mayhem. And I played one part in the fight, played Susan first in the fight, and then Sharon, or was it the other way around? I can't quite remember now, but we rolled around and anything went. You could pick up a large piece of cake and throw it at somebody with impunity. And at one point, David said, well, pick up this. It was like a sort of custard pie in a plate, but it was just a lot of sort of foam. Picked it up and rammed it happily into Susan Henning's face, you know. Oh, that was a good job. And they said, all right, all change. Then, of course, I had to go on and change my clothes and then be Susan and get the pie pushed in my own face, which was a very interesting bit of instant karma. I've never forgotten that.
They have dabs of cake and ice cream all over my face, but you can still see she has these beautiful, big, round, piercing blue eyes, and I have more of a pale gray eyes. And if you look carefully, that's a good time to see the difference of us face front.
Leon Charles was the, quote, dialogue coach, unquote, on the picture. Leon was a good help. He got their lines so they weren't afraid of the lines, and he rehearsed scenes with the children. He never superimposed any directorial comments, but he just rehearsed the actors in their parts, which was a great help because they got to bounce back and forth, and then I would get them ready to go to rehearse, and I'd say, I want you to forget everything that you had, forget all the cues, forget what other actors said to you at all. We're changing the whole story around. And that would shock them, and then I'd say, no, we're not changing the story, but I want you to forget what happened. And then we'd start fresh. They'd cleanse their minds, and we'd start again. I said, you've never heard this dialogue before. This is the first time you're hearing it. And that alerted them, and their eyes opened up, and then they do the scene properly.
In my memory of any particular director I've ever had, it was David at the top. First he would set the stage of what he was expecting. Stay here, do, not how to do something, but what the parameters. They were so firm that you were so at ease knowing you knew what he wanted and you could give it to him. He allowed your creative, artistic character to come out. So we were able to be ourselves, and yet in a very definite circumstance.
The key scene in Parent Trap is the scene between the two girls in the tent when they're sent to the tent for punishment, and they discover they're sisters.
Don't you find it peculiar that we both look so much alike and have the same birthday? It's just one of those things, isn't it?
She was the right one to dig for that secret.
Will you come inside a minute? Please?
It wouldn't have worked the other way for the California girl to do it. If they don't get the emotional impact of that scene, you're dead in the water for the rest of the film because nobody will care. And Haley just did it to perfection.
It's my mother. But it's my mother, too.
Everything I wanted out of that scene, she came through with beautifully, with very little coaching.
Lunch. You go. I'm not hungry.
She had you on the verge of tears at that point. So you really cared about them and seeing their parents, and you believed all of that.
Golly. Sisters.
Yep, that little child was a marvel.
The confusion between Sharon playing Susan and Susan playing Sharon arose with the accent. It got a little bit confusing when Susan's Boston so-called accent slipped and Sharon's American so-called accent slipped.
My very own father.
Own father?
Father.
Father.
She was assuming an accent anyway. What wasn't acceptable, of course, is when Susan's American accent slipped, because she was American. But hopefully those little slip-ups were acceptable and understandable. In fact, I think there was one scene where I wasn't sure who I was supposed to be, and that's the scene coming down the stairs when they're both dressed identically, and they try to fool Mum and Dad, but they don't know, and I don't think we knew who we were. I don't know who we were.
Sharon, go right upstairs and put your suit on now. Go on.
Are you sure she's Sharon?
Of course she is. Aren't you?
The Sherman Brothers came up with a perfect song for The Parent Trap.
We had the dinner staged. That was part of the script, but we didn't have the entertainment staged. There was no number. I was shooting. I left my script up on the third floor of the studio, and I ran up fast in between shots of rehearsal and to get my script, and as I was rushing back down, Walt came out and grabbed me in the hallway. He said, "Bud, come here, I want you to meet two guys." I said, "Walt, I don't have time." He says, "It's my studio, come with me." Well, he had a good point there. I think either do it or go find another job. So I went with him. He says, "I want you to meet these two fellas," and he said, they're talented musicians, I think you'll like them. Dick and Bob Sherman. And they sit down at a piano in his office, and they play this tune called For Now, For Always. And I thought right away, I said, that's one of the most beautiful love songs I've ever heard.
For now, for always, our love will stay as warm as summer, for come what may.
And then Walt said, now play the other one, where the two girls dance together. I go, wait a minute, that's not in the script. And he said, but listen to this. And they sang this song. Let's get together, yeah, yeah, yeah. And they played, and I said, what do you know? Let's think about that. Walt says, no, we're not going to think about it. We're going to do it. And I said, oh, okay, Walt. That was the first intimation I had that we were going to do a musical number.
Yeah, yeah, yeah was before the Beatles.
Yeah, that was before we said, let's get together, yeah, yeah, yeah. And they said, she loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. It was not quite the same.
I tried to get Walt to cut the violin playing, but he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't cut anything. God bless him.
He used to, when we were making the film, Parent Trap, he used to come down on the set, not every day, but almost every day. And our director, David Swift, would close the set to honor the head of the studio. And Disney would tell us how wonderful the Rushes were and how pleased he was and how we were all so wonderful and the photography was wonderful and we were all very thrilled, and we'd stand there with our mouths open and listen to him, and then he'd say goodbye, and we'd open up the set again and go back to work.
When Walt Disney walked onto the set here, and all the crew and everybody, craft services and everybody saying, hi, Uncle Walt, I thought, isn't that the nicest thing? Isn't that darling? I mean, these people are crazy about the man.
We'd sit and he'd tell us stories, or we were just part of a family.
You know, the whole cast was incredible. It really, really was. And of course, then we had a director, David Swift, and nobody was better than him.
You don't need a director for this kind of a cast.
He was wonderful and a fine, fine writer. He wrote a magnificent script, and it was a compliment to all of us to perform his work. And it's amazing how popular that movie really is.